Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode in ShapeHero Factory. This episode is going to be a little different, for you see, this is my first officially submitted speedrun. Now, I've never really been a hard follower of speedruns. Sure, I've enjoyed a Games Done Quick or GDQ stream and some YouTube videos, but I really haven't looked into the rules of speedrunning or gone too far past the surface. So this run, I simply did with the intention of going fast. I came up with a strategy, which I'll highlight during the run, but I didn't really know the rules, the parameters, or anything else about official speedrunning. Well, after I did the run, I thought I'd done pretty well. I know this run is far from optimized, but the strategy showed that it can hold up, and I was curious to see what everyone else was doing. Well, after looking into the speedrunning scene for ShapeHero Factory, it's probably not too much of a surprise, but there isn't much of a scene for this game. I'm not sure if it's just because it's in early access, if people just haven't quite discovered this game yet, or just because people aren't enjoying this game as much as I have. But I'm not really one to pass up an opportunity, so I submitted the run. Though I do have to admit, since submitting this run and putting this video together, I'm no longer the first place run. But again, I'll say this run is a lot of optimization to do, which I plan on working on over the course of the future. So let's jump into the game and I'll walk you through what my strategy is and what I plan on doing to improve my time. So this run specifically is in the category of Ascension 5, Minion Master, any percent, with full arcane knowledge. After reading the rules of these sort of speedruns, I learned that the time starts once you hit the go button on the run, and ends when the final score screen shows up after defeating or surviving the final boss. Obviously, right off the bat, I can see that there's a lot of hesitation in some of my clicking, which could probably be improved a bit. Again, I had an idea and a strategy going into the run, but trying to think through exactly what I needed in the moment sort of had a little bit of stalling. So already there's a bit of improvement I can make there. But I've pretty much opted to go with my usual strategies that you've probably seen me do in some of my other videos. Upon further reflection, watching some of the other speedruns that are out there, there's a little bit of improvement that I can make on sort of this opening setup, which I plan on exploring a little bit in the future. But my main strategy for this run was really two things: shield bearers and mages. Now, again, I know that sounds a little bit sort of straightforward, but here's the idea. Shield bearers are probably one of the best sort of defensive or blocking heroes in the game, because they just block a lot of things. They obviously block pretty much all of the mini-bosses. I'll be honest, I don't remember definitively if they block Serpens, that mini-boss. But obviously going shield bearers protects me from a lot of the stuff in the game, which allows me to sort of take on those mini-bosses if I ever wanted to sort of get that, the red research. But the other thing is the mages. If the mage spawns roughly just outside of where the shield bearer spawns. So if the shield bearers can prevent people or these the baddies from getting close to the gate, they can hold them just outside of that area. But again, the mages spawn just outside of the shield bearers. So if I get shield bearers holding the baddies sort of in a specific radius from the gate, the mass mages could just clean all of them up. And that was sort of the strategy. Obviously, with any excess units produced, I'd funnel them into the gate because they're an offensive force that can sort of help take down some of the bigger things that are coming through. But also the druids. I was looking at the druids, which I haven't actually experienced in a game before this one. But I do know that they heal things. And so obviously if my whole strategy is to just survive with the shield bearers, obviously the druids would be a really good addition to that, keeping those shield bearers alive. But again, as I'm sort of looking through the map, I've already got an idea that I'm not planning on taking on any Serpens mini-bosses. Just because, again, they're the one thing that I'm not confident that I can not take damage from. And as of this game, doing this game, I also was concerned about the, I think they're called I'll be honest, I forget the name of them right now, but the ones that sort of break down. Once you kill them, they sort of break into a batch of smaller ones, and then when you kill those, they break into another batch of smaller ones. I wasn't confident that I would be able to hold them off. I think they would just sort of keep plowing into the shield bearers to the point where they would kill them, and here we go, making silly mistakes, trying to go fast again. Obviously, a lot of things to work on. We got there in the end, but with that, my initial setup is complete. These are going to sort of keep the minions producing throughout the course of the game. My first level up, as you may have seen, I took mana, because that's the big thing in the beginning, is I just wanted to sort of get a base up and running, because that's obviously the foundation for the rest of my build. But as you can sort of see from this view right here, we have both the triangles and the squares behind where I set up sort of my foundational unit production, which is going to be a little bit annoying in the future, because now I have to weave everything around the sort of baseline canvases, whereas sometimes they appear on different corners of the map, which makes it easier to sort of build the separate canvases over in those corners. But again, that's the nature of roguelike games. You have to adapt to everything that's going on. And with that, I have produced my first shield bearer. Obviously, it's not going to be a lot of them going into this combat, but that's more or less the general strategy. So the other thing to talk about is time. Obviously, speedrunning is all about going fast, and so that begs to look into the numbers themselves. This game does have a bare minimum sort of speedrunning capability, unless there's some magical sips that I can't fathom are in this game. But every tree building, every node, you have two phases: the building phase and the actual combat phase. Both of them can be speed up to a ×3 sort of speed. So the time for this building phase isn't obviously set in stone, but building phases are 2 minutes and 30 seconds, which, if, again, you are constantly running on 3 times speed, could get you down to 50 seconds. When it comes to the battles, those do vary. After doing this run, I looked into the actual numbers, because I hadn't really focused on it until this point, but standard nodes that are just, waves of creatures are 40 seconds. If you do click on a mini-boss node, if you do want to take on a mini-boss, those are a minute long. And then every boss at the end of each tree is a minute and 30 seconds. So obviously, if we increase the speed 3 times for all of those things, the 40-second nodes become like 13.3 repeated seconds. The 1-minute nodes obviously break down into 20 seconds each, and then the boss nodes turn into 30 seconds each. So, with 13 total nodes, 3 of them are bosses. They have to be mini bosses. The bare minimum time that you could possibly do this run in is 14 minutes and 33 seconds. Now, obviously, that doesn't include clicking through the tree, and it doesn't include all of the cutscenes going sort of, as you're about to see right here, going from this map to the battle map. I will say that after watching some of the speedruns that were submitted, one of the, 2 speedruns that were submitted for this game, someone's already come up with a way to sort of bypass that cutscene. Not entirely, but definitely kind of speed it up, which, again, I plan on exploring and practicing, because that's part of the game, or part of speedrunning. But obviously that's kind of the barest minimum. You can do the run at a minimum of 14 minutes and 33 seconds, and that is if you are running completely on 3-time build speed, which obviously for Ascension level 5 isn't practical. I was watching some of the Ascension 0 speed runs, which, as of the time of this recording, I think the The current record for that was 18 minutes, which is pretty close to that 14:33, if, is much closer, I should say, than this particular speed run. But obviously Ascension 0 doesn't require nearly as much power as Ascension 5 does. Obviously, as I've shown in one of my previous videos, you can do Ascension 0 with just units fairly easily. You can, I think if I remember correctly, I really didn't get any favorable relics in that game, and I didn't get anything that really spoke specifically to that build. Yet I still won. Whereas if you wanted to try and do like a units only on Ascension 5, you would need an aligning of the stars in order to do so. You need to make sure that your relics that you acquire are, top tier, and you need to squeeze everything that you could possibly squeeze out of your mana. So, obviously for Ascension 5, you have to come up with some sort of strategy, which is why I came up again with sort of the Mage Shield Bearer strategy to just survive. Obviously, there might be better strategies in the future. Obviously, there might be more optimal choices. Obviously, there are some top-tier capstone heroes that do enough damage to kill the final boss instead of just surviving him. But I figured, again, we'd start with this strategy, see how it works. And as you can see, it's working very well already. We're almost done with the first tree after this particular battle. And once you'll see at the very end of it, I mean, obviously, spoiler alert, the fact that it was a successful speed run means that I've completed this run in the appropriate time. But it holds up pretty well against the final boss. One of the other big things that I was watching another speed run of this game is, one of the things that I can do better is, this is wasted time right here. You can always go back to your map while you are in combat like this. Obviously, you'll still want to be in 3 times speed, so 13 seconds if you're on just a standard node isn't a lot of time to make improvements, but it is time that I could be doing things, which is, again, all about speedrunning, optimization. And so, yeah, that's sort of, the timing thing. But when it comes to heroes, again, I've already talked about kind of my goal and strategy when it comes to heroes themselves. But the research was also another big thing, because obviously every moment I'm in this screen right here, this research tree, I am stopped time. And obviously the goal of speedrunning is to just go as fast as you can. So I want to try and keep that timer going as much as possible. But at the same time, I want to try and make sure that I'm maximizing all of the different things that I can get. One of the big things about Ascension 5 is, I think it's Ascension level 3, the amount of experience you get from completing a fight is cut in half. And so you want to try and squeeze every hero you can into that portal so you can get as much XP as you can, which is why I'm doing these slow moments, so that I can try and get as much of that experience as I can out of the hero production. But this is one of those things that I'm going to have to improve upon, because obviously the more I slow down time, the longer that I extend the run. So I need to work on learning the break points. Honestly, is my next big thing that I can possibly do, is learn the break points of each of the nodes. Clearly I don't need 500 shield bearers to make it through this boss battle. I mean, it's helpful, but at the same time, I can stand to take some damage at this point. Obviously, if I wanted to spend a little bit of my health to just go faster, obviously I don't need to produce as many shield bearers or as many units, but again, this is my first ever real speedrun attempt, and now this is where the improvements really can begin. But again, it's just one of those things right now where I can see, once again, I could have been doing more than just sort of sitting there staring at it. But again, going back to the research ideas, Super Motif Maker, I think hands down is the best research in this game, because it is the only one that increases your motif production, which is key. Getting that in this run was exactly what I wanted, especially after the first boss, which isn't a guarantee, but Obviously, there aren't a lot of the boss level researches that you can get, so it was good odds. But obviously, right here, this is another one of those moments where I could have made a decision a little bit faster. Again, if I was going to do druids, I needed green, which I didn't have on my original board, but at the same time, I also wanted to get some more triangles, get some more circles, so I can get some more unit production. I mean, I've already got the squares and triangles that I need to do mages and do shield bearers, but obviously having more of those base resources is always beneficial. But the big thing was just making that decision. Again, small optimizations, but when it comes to research choices, the first thing that I know that I wanted was some sort of conveyor management. And I know that in a lot of the videos, I'm a huge fan of the efficient delivery research, which I still maintain is probably the best conveyor management research. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. But when it comes to other ones, obviously the transportation hub is really good with sort of being able to teleport conveyors and objects around the map. Obviously, you don't have to restrain yourself so much, and it saves some mana if you have to set up little conveyor lines on the other side of your map. Layout hub, the one that is the instead of having to separate and bridge over other conveyor belts and stuff like that, you can just sort of put one conveyor into one input and another conveyor into another input, and it will automatically divide them between two different canvases. That one is also pretty good, but obviously not the best. And then the other ones, I just haven't really found not any use, but I don't really value them over, the other conveyor management sort of research and stuff like that. It's not that they're bad, it's just that they don't provide as much benefit as some of the other options do. When it comes to non-conveyor management ones, obviously one of the ones that I wanted to look at was the just add more squares, because it's the only other one that can kind of be viewed as a increased motif source. And the only way that I can really justify it is, depending on how you do the tree, every 10 uses of a square, or I think it's, I don't remember the other numbers, but every time you use a square in the production of something, it gives you a free one after so many. So if you really stretch, what that means, again, it's more motifs, it's more squares over the course of time. So that's one of the other ones that I valued, especially since Shield Bearers was one of the core components of this build. And then from there, some of the other ones that I would be happy to take, but I didn't think was absolutely necessary, was, again, the smart equipment. Obviously, not having to worry about adding minions and stuff to make the canvases go faster. Smart equipment is really nice because I already like to build my stuff in parallel, so it just sort of works already for my general playstyle. A lot of the minion production stuff is good, but at the same time, it requires a lot of research in order to sort of get going. And at this point, I didn't really know how much resources I would need to complete the run. Obviously, I've done enough runs to know that Ascension 5 isn't the hardest thing in the world, but it's, it still can be difficult. It still can catch you off guard if you aren't, properly building to do it. I like this one, just a free relic. I don't know why I took so long to click that button. It's just a free relic. But again, at this point in the game, you can see that simply shields and simply units have gotten me most of the way through the second tree. And obviously, I'm sort of getting into my mage production, which was the other key portion of my build. But honestly, I don't need to be going slow right now, because I'm already in a good place. With the amount of shield bearers that I'm producing, I'm still at full health. I'm still not taking any damage. So this is one of those things that I could definitively fix right now, or in future runs, is I don't need to be in slow time right now. But, I mean, that being said, we're still doing good. This was the first learning one, so it's only improvement from here. But some of the other things that I can think of, obviously, I need to do a little bit less slowing of the time. I need to just sort of play the run, even if it's not in 3 times speed, but just play in normal time, because squeezing every mage out at this point isn't hugely valuable. But and so one of the other thoughts when it came into doing this run is mini bosses. Again, going into this run, I didn't realize that mini bosses are the increased time. One of the things that I thought going into this run was that each tree had a longer battle phase. So the first tree would be like 40 seconds long, because I knew 40 seconds was the original, the time for the original nodes, the baseline nodes. But I thought going into the second tree is what increased the time. So I thought going into the second tree is what upped it to a minute, and then I thought the final tree was 1:30. Only after sort of review and looking through it did I realize that all of the nodes for all of the trees are exactly the same. It's just a matter of which node you're clicking. Obviously, the baseline node, as I've said a couple times now, is 40 seconds. The mini boss is a minute. The boss is 1:30. So one of the things that I now need to think about is what mini bosses do I actually need to do? Obviously, I'm sitting on one of the red researchers right now, which I don't need because I'm not using it right now. But the more optimized run is going to involve as few mini bosses as possible, because it's a free 7-second time save per mini boss. So obviously, if you hit both mini bosses possible in each of the trees, that's 7 times 6, which is, again, a lot of is time. It's not a mountain of time. It's not a third of your time save, but it's a fair amount of time. So when I sit here and think about it right now, obviously, I finally got efficient delivery, which is one of the things that I wanted to intimately get, which I did finally get. Obviously, I had the research to sort of grind through that immediately, and I did finally use that red research to finish up the motif maker. But as I sit here and talk right now, one of the big things that I think is there's really only 3 red research that I would like, and that's for the super motif tree, because I don't think there's any other red research that is of extreme importance, because certain things like the duplication tech is useless for a build like this, because each duplication pad only increases the amount produced by 1. And when you're producing numbers that are, more than 100, it's just not as beneficial. When it comes to, capstone heroes, it could make a bit of a difference where your breakpoint is 90 before you get to the first star. But again, the duplicator tech just isn't very beneficial, which is where one of the uses of the sort of red research can really come in handy. Where's some of the other red research? I probably should have had a list ready for this, but I know the Minion production has some red research nodes in there that can be beneficial, but aren't extremely beneficial. I think, watching what I'm doing right now, I know that I like making these conveyors beautiful and sort of fully functional. Obviously, I break those 2 notches up off there so that I can sort of stack up as many I funnel into the portal after I unslow time, because I know, again, I'm going to be in this slow time for a little bit, because my whole plan was to revamp this conveyor system a little bit. Which, again, in retrospect, I don't know if it was 100% necessary, but I know why I did it. Obviously, if I broke up all of that conveyor system, I can get 3 more canvases down on my sort of baseline unit production, and those canvases can go into funneling and fueling more of that shield bearer production. And now that I have efficient delivery, I don't have to use a bunch of bridges. I don't have to use a bunch of the bulky dividers and splitters and stuff like that. Everything can be nice and neat, which will be sort of shown once I'm done with all of this. But this is one of the real beauties that I like about efficient delivery as a sort of research tech is you don't have, it really helps with compacting space. You know, obviously to build a fully fleshed out sort of production line, you only need 3 squares, or 2 really if you aren't doing what I'm doing right here with taking those canvases, the unit canvases, and funneling everything into a single line. You know, if you were just sort of doing this off to the side without having to work around some other canvases, you could just do 2 rows behind each canvas, one for one of the resources and one for the other resource. But with that done, one of the things this also does is allows me to, it's like I finally sold that one canvas that was sitting there the whole time, or conveyor. But you know, one of the things this allows me to do is build more canvases in conjunction with each other, because with this setup, it just is as simple as adding another couple of the splitters and sort of cross conveyors to add more canvases on there. I don't need to rework a lot of other conveyors. I just tack some more stuff on. But with that, this is pretty much the build. I am now producing shield bearers, I'm now producing mages, and I'm producing units. It would still be nice to get druids at some point, but I don't know if it's necessary. Obviously, it's beneficial, but I haven't practiced or experienced whether or not it is essential to the success of the build. Obviously, one of the things that I can also do better is anticipating a level up so that I can click through that a little bit faster. One of the big things that I planned on doing for this run is my first level up, I was going to take mana so that I can sort of jumpstart my production overall. And then from there, my next 4 levels was going to be increasing circle production and then increasing triangle production to get those both up to 150. So each baseline motif production can support up to 3 canvases. But obviously with smart canvases, that's not necessarily true, because simply building them in parallel increases the speed of production. So I probably could have adapted a little bit. But at this point, now that I'm at level 10, I really didn't have, you know, a major plan for all of my research. You know, one of the big things was efficient delivery is probably one of the research that I wanted the most, and I got, which was one of my major sources of research that I knew I was going to need. And then the just add more squares was another one of the big ones that I planned on doing for this run, which I already have, and used all the research that I wanted to use for it. And so at this point, really, I don't need any more research. Obviously, there's still some things that I could do with research, but it's by no means necessary. So at this point, I probably could have just continued funneling all of my mana, or my level ups, into additional mana. But, again, first run, still things to learn. And from here, again, I'm reworking this so that I can tack on an extra pair of canvases, which I didn't have in my original build of my mage canvases. Once again, not 100% certain I need to be in slowed time, but I did sort of break apart my entire mage production, so I was a little worried that I wasn't going to have enough mages to survive this upcoming boss battle if I didn't sort of have all of that production up and running. But yeah, again, now just kind of looking at it, this is pretty much the extent of the run. Kind of. You know, I know that I do still acquire some other stuff that I do want to build. Obviously, right now I'm also increasing my shield production. which, as I was saying earlier, is just kind of tacking on extra parts right here. You can see, instead of having to completely rework the conveyor to add on more canvases, just add on the extra parts that I need, and we've more or less added 2 more canvases to the route. I spent so much time just staring at that screen, not knowing what a level up means. And again, I know in the future I could not be in this boss battle right now because this is a free 30 seconds. And the big thing is I didn't really know the survivability of this particular run. So I wanted to watch all of these battles so that I can see how good or bad that this build is doing. But I mean, as we can see at this point, I still haven't taken any damage, which means that it's a very durable build. One of the big issues is, as you can see, is I don't deal really any damage to the bosses. This build is purely with the intention of surviving. So there are options in the future that this one was tricky because I didn't really need any of these. This build doesn't really require any ink. It doesn't require the elite minions, because especially with the smart canvases, which means I took the scroll expansion because it was really the only one that served any value to me. But at the same time, I didn't really plan on using it because it's so expensive when it comes to the research usage. But, I mean, as I was saying earlier, this run did have a lot of excess research that wasn't exactly necessary. And honestly, at this point right here, I'm kind of floundering on a decision because there's really nothing that I need. You know, I'm already building everything that I need to. And so I'm just sort of sitting on this decision when I could probably have just snapped through that decision right there without any real thought because none of it was really needed. But again, I did get another triangle out of it, so I could build some more mages, which is, if I remember correctly, what I think I do right here is I use that source of triangles right there and funnel some of the units off of my sort of foundational construction over there into some more mage production. But sort of going back to what I was saying earlier is obviously one of the big things about this build is it's all about survival. And so I know that there are some of the constructions out there, some of the unit productions that can kill the final boss, but the issue is some of them just require so much coordination. Some of them require so much research usage that I just don't know if I have the time to assure its construction. Again, I know that my last video that I just put up, I experienced the Ninja Masters, which, though they're powerful, they aren't sort of a sure kill on the boss. You know, they definitely can defend, they can definitely defeat and kill things, but at the same time, it's really difficult to guarantee a kill on a boss with them. But then there are things like the Knights. I know there was a run that I did do with the Pegasus Knights. I didn't record it and I didn't post it, but I've experienced the Pegasus Knights already once before, and they're also pretty strong. They can probably reliably kill a boss, but at the same time, they require a lot to fully get up and running. Obviously, horses require half triangles and half squares. Then you have to, you know, build those together. You do have to build some shield bearers. You do have to build some pikemen. You also have to build some... No, it's... I think it's just shield bearers. No, archers. Sorry, I lied. It's archers and sort of the Pegasus. But the Pegasus, first you need the horses. Then you need the horses with a horn, which is just, you know, a triangle in yellow. But now you need yellow, which is, again, a combination of red and green, which if you don't have those two resources, then you can't do the unicorns. And then from there, you need to make them Pegasus by taking two half circles and, again, putting them together through a canvas. And so, again, you could kill the final boss with a build like that, but getting it is just not a certainty. I haven't experienced the Gunner and I haven't experienced the Hitman, so I'm not 100% certain how well they would hold up against killing the final boss, but I know the Shield Bearers upgraded form, the Heavy Infantry, are pretty much just as the Shield Bearers. They just sit there and deal damage, but their radius isn't enough to deal damage to the final boss. And again, there's not a lot of choices to kill the final boss with the current edition of the game. At least in Minion Master side. When it comes to Spellmaster side, there's a lot of options to kill the boss, but one of the big things that the Spellmaster lacks, which I do want to explore speedrunning Spellmaster in the future, is blockers. You know, again, one of the big things about Shield Bearers is they are a really good defense, but the Spellmaster just doesn't have a lot of that unless you start building tons of the Black Dogs, or if you start building the boulders to sort of make a sort of defensive barrier, which is what I'm thinking about doing for my Spellmaster speedrun, but again, I'll explore that a little bit down the road. But again, this is a perfect sort of example of the build in action. You know, again, we're still at full health, which is great to see, but at the same time, and there's finally the Druid. I finally got the Druid, like, so close to the end of the run, but I've got 2 patches of green ink that I had sort of set aside ready to do. I probably shouldn't be pausing, because again, I don't need the Druids at this point from what we can see, but again, I wanted to see what this run did, and, well, I got to see what this run did. And also, this is the first time I've ever seen the Druids, so sure, there was a little bit of just desire to see what these things do, which may not have been the best decision for a speedrun, but, I mean, as we can clearly see, I'm about to see what the Druids do. But yeah, so that's one of the big efficiencies that I can really sort of work on in the future with a build sort of like this is I'm still at full health, meaning I haven't taken a lot of risks when it comes to this game. I've sort of assured that I'm going to win. So going forward, again, this goes back to that what I was saying much earlier in this video is about breakpoints. You know, there's going to be a certain number of shield bearers, a certain number of mages, a certain number of units that you need to have on each node in order to survive it. And so that's one of the things that I get the joy of learning is what are those breakpoints. So I'll be honest with you, I don't remember what I'm doing right here. Oh yeah, I can see that minion line right there is not producing, or is overproducing minions for what I need, but the way that I sort of set up the line, which I could probably have done better in the future, is that's the only canvas that I can get minions sort of, or units out of that production and sort of funneled into the portal. But instead of going left at all of those canvases to sort of come in from the left side of those shield bearers, I probably could have funneled everything to the right and then just peeled off one of the left canvases to funnel into the portal for future sort of run. But, as I feel I've said for like 800th time at this point, there's many optimizations to be made on this particular run. And so now that we've got druids funneling into the portal, I finally get to see what they do. But I mean, at ×3 speed, and having already produced sort of a mountain of units, again, I don't think the druids were necessary per se, but they just sort of pop up, wave their wand, and vanish. I don't really get to see what they're affecting. I don't know if they affect all the shield bearers or just one or two of them. That's really one of the questions that I don't know. Even after this run, I don't know how much of an impact that they make. But yeah, one of the things that I was also talking about earlier that I didn't really get to finish is the mini-boss options that I would be choosing to tackle in this game was one of the things that I didn't know I did know. I thought through off the top of my head. Obviously, serpents I wasn't going to tackle, or the The one that sort of divides when killed, I wasn't going to really tackle because I didn't think I could do it. But one of the ones that I did know is the plant one that sort of sits in the distance and just sort of continuously spawns smaller things to come and attack you. You know, I knew I could defeat that very easily with this particular build, especially because, again, the shield bears stop everything from coming, and then the wizards or the mages attack everything within their radius. Again, the swarm mini bosses I knew that I could take, and that means it's the plant one, and then the I forget what they're exactly called. I don't know if it's Magnus or Manus, but the little swarm pack one I knew that I could also take. In retrospect, this pause time is completely unnecessary. I probably could have just sped through the rest of the game at this point and still won. Meaning I am only wasting time in the grand scheme of the speedrun, but a lot of learning. But the other mini bosses that I was thinking about is this one that I'm about to tackle now, the shell that has just sort of the barrier. I wasn't 100% certain that I'd be able to take these ones. Because again, I know that they just have a lot of health to try and get through, especially with that shield, so I wasn't really planning on taking any of them on, but at this point in the run, I see that, again, I'm still at full health, I'm still doing pretty good. I figured I could, take it on. But, I mean, at the same time, I'm also sitting on 2 research for the last while, so I really don't need any of this research, which is one of the things that I'll be doing in the future, is not taking on mini-bosses like this unnecessarily. But yeah, the last mini-boss option is the radius one, which I also knew that I could take. The shield bearers obviously are just a wall, and so having the sort of ranged projectile ones constantly shooting into it, really, I didn't think was going to be much of an issue for this particular build. So I was going to take those ones if they came down the line too. I guess the other one big thing that taking on mini-bosses does is it does give you relics. But after looking currently at my list of relics in the upper left-hand corner, the second one, the circuit relic, is nice. Obviously things in parallel build faster, and since my whole thing is already the smart canvases and already building things in parallel, it's one of those relics that comes out really nice. But I think, in the grand scheme of things, it's one of the only relics that really benefits this build. Obviously, everything else up there, the first one just gives me increased health. The third one, I think, makes my... I'll be honest with you, I don't remember what that one does off the top of my head. I think it helps specifically the units, the heroes that sort of move away from the gate. I think it makes them a little bit more powerful. The drill makes the bridges a little bit cheaper. The book helps with half-circle motifs, which is completely useless to me in this build. The next one after that is the parts. Increased experience, which, again, is also useless for this build because I don't make any parts at all. The egg gives more relics per mini-boss defeat. And again, a lot of the relics that I'm looking at just really don't benefit this build at all. But, again, at this point, we've sort of fly through this one because, as I've already seen, this build is pretty much complete. I already know that I'm going to win this final fight. It's just a matter of how much damage I take. But yeah, as we sort of pretty much come to the end of this run, this is pretty much what my speedrun plan is. Now it's just a matter of cleaning up the gameplay. Obviously learning the breakpoints that I need to have, how many of the given heroes going into the battle in order to survive it. So that I can start pushing how much usage I get out of my health. But yeah, I'm just going to watch the final boss battle of this speedrun. And so yeah, that's speedrun. Obviously we survived. Time stop comes up in just a moment once this end of game score sheet comes up. And that's the speed run. 43 minutes, 54 seconds. Again, as I stated earlier, unfortunately, this is no longer the fastest speed run of this particular category, but it's a start. And so again, thanks for watching. I hope the commentary wasn't too ranting. But again, I appreciate you guys watching with me. Let me know what your thoughts are on this build. If there's any other ideas that you can think of that would make a speed run go faster. Again, from here, it's just practice, practice, practice. And once again, thanks for watching and have a great day.